Welcome guys to this new tutorial in Blender, and today I'm going to show you a method to create a fake displacement effect with a twisting effect, but without using geometry nodes, only using the shading editor. This is a useful trick if you don't know how to use geometry nodes, or if you want to have the same effect of the tilting attribute of a curve using geometry nodes. So let's get started. I'm using Blender version 3.6.2, and I remember you to create a tube, a pipe, and to do this I can create with a Shift A curve, a bezier, focus on it, go to the data properties, and inside the geometry section you can increase the depth if you want to have more or less radius of your piping, increase the resolution to, for example, 128. I always suggest you to use a multiplication of powering of the minimum value of 2, so 2, 4, 8, etc., to always have a good resolution of the shape if you need to increase or decrease drastically this amount of resolution without having issues caused by the odd number of vertices. You can fill the caps. If you want to have the same result with the geometry nodes, it's an optional method. You can create another bezier, shift it on the Y, go to plus, general, geometry nodes. You can jump to the next chapter if you want to skip these, create a new geometry node. This is not the trick that I want to show you for this tutorial, is only another method to create the same effect here. If I select this previous geometry and go here, I have 2 mm of depth, and if I select this and set a curve to mesh, I can use a circle curve, set the same amount of resolution, set the same radius of the previous, link this to the profile and flag fill caps, and this is the same result here. But there is a problem. Here we have a free UVmap from a Blender. Here we don't have a correct UV. So if I go in the shading editor, for example, and create a new material here, pipe, I set the same material for the previous geometry here, and if I add a coordinate system, hold Shift and Control, click on the generated, normal and UV, you have a correct UV for the first shape. You don't have the same result for this pipe because you need to go in the geometry node and set the material, the same material, if you want to see the same result in the shading editor. So you can see we have black result for this object. So in this case, if you are using the geometry nodes, you need to create your own UV map. And to do this, I remember what you need. You need the spline parameter. You need to capture the attribute of your baseline and a capture attribute of your profile line. Link the factor inside the first and the second because you need to save the X and Y component in a new combine XYZ, and one of these is a value that goes from 0 to 1 along the path of the curve, the base curve, and the other is the value from 0 to 1 around the surface from a point to the other side along this path. Okay, and now that I have these, I can store this information in a store name attribute, linking the result of the surface here and name it in UVmap. Now, because I'm linking the set material of the pipe, if I want to see the same result here, I need to add in the shading editor an attribute and get the same name I put before, so UVmap. Hold the Shift, Control and click, and going to vector, you can see the correct UVmap. If I go here in the UV, you can see the same result here. If you have few resolution for your geometry shape, you can have here from 0 to 1, okay, in this point, in this part of the shape, weird values of the color. And to fix this problem, you can see the video here that I created for this purpose. So now that we have the correct UV for a base geometry using the data properties of a simple curve and a shape created by geometry nodes, I can show you the trick. If I take the UV of the first curve here, here, you can see this result, but to better understand this result, I separate these in the three components, hold Shift, Control and click, and you can see the value from 0 to 1 along this shape. If I repeat the operation, you can see correct values from 0 to 1 around the shape, and the trick to create a twisting effect, this shape, if I link this UV map to a wave vector of a wave texture, and I want to see this result here, it's perfect, but I have a problem of rotation. I want to have lots of lines in this direction, okay, along the path. So instead of using this UV, I need to use a combine XYZ, link the vector here, and link the Y component to the X, because I want to flip this result without changing the X and Y of this wave texture. You can see the rotated effect here because I'm using the Y values for the X component of the vector for this wave result. Now, to imagine the twisting, you can imagine that if you divide this piece in more parts and add a shifting for each part along the direction of the tangent, so along this path, what do you get? You get a shifting of these lines a little bit. This will be the same, the other will be shifted a little bit, the other will be shifted more, the other more and more, etc., getting a fake twisting of the shape. And to do this, we can use the same X value of the UV map. So if I use this value of the X that goes from 0 to 1, I can use these to add values on the Y component. So if I take these and add what the X multiplied by a factor to don't exaggerate in the adding operation, so 1 multiplied by 5, for example, and add these to the Y values, so these values here, and link this result to the X, the result of the wave is this. And if I increase or decrease the multiply operation, you can adjust the amount of shifting of each value of the Y along the path. So if you set 0, you have the original values, okay? And if you increase the multiplication of each value of the X input here, adding to the Y, you get a correct fake of twisting. And if you have issues in this link, you can adjust the scale of the wave texture and not the multiply value, because the same effort of the multiply is affected on all the points of the shape. Okay, so to adjust these values in this point, you need to change the scale until the correct values here. So if I set 1.5, for example, I don't have much error in this point. You can see if I zoom a lot, you have this weird effect. So to fix this problem, you can press N, go to view and decrease the clip start, so the cutting part of the point of view of your viewport, to 0.01 millimeter to zoom in a lot. And with this effect, you don't need to use the tilting attribute of geometry nodes, so you don't need to use here in a geometry world the set tilt, curve tilt here, using the same factor value of the spline multiplied by an amplitude and linking these to the tilt attribute here. You don't need to follow this operation, but you can only work on this editor. And at the same time, for this geometry nodes shape, I can select these and link the vector of the attribute of the UVmap inside these separated XYZ and have the same result. You can see the same result in this geometry. Next, you can use these to create a shape with a displacement map. So I can link this vector to a displacement scale here, link this to the displacement. Remember that you need to go in the cycle render engine, go in the material, and down in the settings you need to change the displacement from bump only to displacement only, or displacement and map. It's the same, otherwise you can't see the result of the displacement displacement in the rendering. And now if I press this button, you can see this weird effect because I have a problem here, and the problem is the scale. I can set this to the height and decrease the scale to 0.001. To better see the result, you need to go to the stack modifier and add a subdivision surface using the adaptive subdivision, and in this way I can decrease a little bit the scale like this, and you can see the correct displacement on the surface. The same for the other shape. I can increase the global environment light, so I can increase a little bit to see result here and link the UV of the original. In the same way, I need to add a subdivision surface and enable the adaptive subdivision in this case, and you can see the beauty of this shape without using the geometry nodes system. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. You can download this for free from my Gumroad page or create from scratch if you want. If you liked what I'm doing, please subscribe to my channel, check a like, leave a comment if you want more information about it, and see you to the next tutorial. Bye!